When I was a kid, I used to be obsessed with the MTV Music chart show, right? And my biggest ever dream was to be the presenter of that show. And so I had this iTunes playlist where every week I would create my top 10. So I would shuffle the songs around, I would add new entries, and I'd learn these little facts about each of the singers or bands who sang the songs. And then every Monday after school, I would come home and I would sit and for like an hour straight, I would just present my top 10 and then play each song in full, like to no one, just alone in my room. And now I'm 23, presenting my top 5 books of the year alone in my room. So no character development, just vibes. It's currently August, and so far this year I've read 100 books, and these right here are my top 5. These are the best of the best, the creme de la creme, the bee's knees. Today, I'm here to rant and rave and preach about how wonderful these 5 books are. I loved them, and I really hope that you will too. Now, I actually keep track of everything that I read using this reading log, which I created. My compliments to the chef. It's the perfect place to note down all the books you want to read, all the books that you have read, and there's loads of prompts to encourage you to think mindfully and really reflect on what you have been reading. And this is actually from my stationery company, Ink Outside the Box, which I've been working on for 4 years. And Ink Outside the Box is powered by Shopify, who have very kindly sponsored today's video, which is so exciting for me because it's something I use every single day with my business. And now I basically just get to tell you how great they are. I've been using them since the very beginning of this company because Shopify essentially streamlines the process of running your business. It's an all-in-one commerce platform for anyone to grow and manage their business regardless of technical experience, because some of us have none. Exhibit A, right here. Shopify basically provides you with all of the resources that you need to sell online, to sell in person, and on social media platforms. Basically removing any barrier that might be stepping in the way of you starting your dream. There's no friction, it's very easy to use. And as I said, I've sworn by Shopify for 4 years now with my small business, so this is a personal recommendation. If you want to check out my reading logs and my online store, you can check out inkoutsidethebox.co.uk, powered by Shopify. We sell planners, to-do lists, reading logs, of course. Thank you, Shopify, for sponsoring this video, but also thanks for just being great. The link will be down below for you to get a 14-day free trial at shopify.com/jackedwards. Now, I promised you 5 great book recommendations, and this is number 1. These are going to be in no particular order because that would be like choosing between my literal children, but this is The Promise by Damon Galga. This glorious, monumental, huge achievement of a novel is set in South Africa and considers apartheid by focusing on different members of a white family as well as their black maid who was promised land at one point in a promise that was never fulfilled. I think this section from the novel sums it up perfectly. Apartheid has fallen, see? We die right next to each other now in intimate proximity. It's just the living part we still have to work out. This won the 2021 Booker Prize, and I was actually fortunate enough to hear the author himself speak at Hay Festival on stage, and I was just in awe. I knew I needed to read this book immediately. That was the promise that I made to myself. And he was basically talking about how to make ends meet. At one point, he basically did some screenwriting, and he was talking about how the process of learning how to write for the screen really impacted the way that he wrote this book. You can see how that awareness of cinema has really influenced this novel because the narration essentially flows very fluidly between perspectives and people and inanimate objects, just like how a camera would. So that gives this book so much added depth. It's a very, very experimental style, which I think completely pays off. And I really enjoyed that freedom of movement between perspectives. It makes it a much more holistic narrative style, I think, and really complements the completely unflinching and unsparing and sharp character studies that this book contains. No character behaves perfectly. There are a lot of flawed characters in this book because that's how real humans operate. And I think Damon Galga really expertly explores the silencing of black voices in this book too. And you really get a taste of the imprint each family leaves on this earth and its future generations and the people that it comes into contact with, as well as the ways that real people communicate and interact with each other and let each other down. Okay, I just need to read you one more quote because I love this book. What happens in a room lingers there invisibly. All deeds, all words, always. Not seen, not heard, except by some, and even then imperfectly. In this very room, both birth and death have taken place. Long ago, maybe, but the blood is still visible on certain days when time wears thin. I think it's beautiful. Also, this book is divided up into 4 parts, and each part focuses on a funeral of a different character. And I just found it completely captivating. Please read this book. I will continue to shove it down your throat. It's the kind of book that as soon as I finished reading, I immediately wanted to like write an essay about or something. It has this understated power and gravity and That's gonna be a bit of a common theme with these books. Speaking of which, my next recommendation, a book that I absolutely adored this year, is A Lena Knows by Claudia Pinheiro. And this was translated from the Spanish by Francis Riddle. Our central protagonist here is a woman called Elena, whose daughter has supposedly committed suicide, but she doesn't think that's the case. She's absolutely convinced that there must be foul play involved somewhere. She doesn't believe that her daughter would do that. And so she starts to investigate. And there's a certain person from her daughter's past that she really wants to speak to. And that's all I'll say, because I don't want there to be any spoilers, but this quote on the cover I think sums up this very concisely and perfectly, so I thought I would just read it to you. A piercing commentary on mother-daughter relationships, the indignity of bureaucracy, the burdens of caregiving, and the impositions of religious dogma on women. That is exactly what this book is. What I loved is the pacing of this book. It really feels like there's this orchestral build-up to this huge crescendo where rage and anxiety and confusion and resentment all kind of boil up in this one huge moment, and it made me ugly cry. Like, I was sitting in this cafe in the middle of Paris sobbing whilst reading this. It was such a warm day. I had goosebumps all over my body. I genuinely had such a visceral response to reading this book, and I think that when words in black and white on a piece of paper can make your whole body feel such strong emotions because of how well the intensity is built up, I mean, round of applause, standing ovation. Interestingly, the dialogue in this book is written in italics, but with no line breaks, even when different people start speaking. But the thing is, each person is characterized so clearly that you never really have any doubt over who is the one speaking. And I thought that style worked perfectly, especially when we get to a point where there is potentially a large confrontation. It really emphasizes the severity and the sheer intensity of the rebuttals and the ferocity of that conversation, because it's all italicized, it's so quick and fast-paced. It feels like I've never read a book which so perfectly seemed to capture like an argument or like a heated exchange where both people are like thinking and responding very quickly. I thought it was masterful and so amazing. This book considers mortality, our agency over our own bodies, especially when they begin to fail us, and also the sometimes harmful rhetorics of organized religion, and also just so much more. Let me read you a quote. Elena never understood why people chose caskets made of noble hardwoods that would take a long time to break down. If so many people believe that we are all of dust and to dust must turn again, why delay the return? They pick fancy caskets just to show off, she thinks. Why would they do it otherwise, if they know neither the coffin nor what's inside it are destined to last, but to rot, to be eaten by worms, both the wood and the body that no longer holds the person it was, a body that no longer belongs to anyone, like an empty bag, incomplete, a pod without seeds. I would sell my soul to get to read this book again for the first time. And you maybe can. So that is Elena Knows. Next we have my one true love, Panenka by Ronan Hession. This is another searing and moving character study with the most brilliant cast of peripheral characters. My edition is actually signed by the author, and I genuinely think if my house was burning down, I would save this. I would run in and save it. That's how important this book is to me. Now, as you know, any book that makes me cry is immediately top tier, in my opinion. And this had me bawling on a busy train on New Year's Day. This is the first book that I read this year. And who knows, maybe those tears were just the alcohol from the night before trying to like escape my body. But I'm gonna put it down to the devastating writing in Panenka. This is just such a precious little book that blew me away. It's a story of a kind of domestic tragedy, of a family that has been broken down due to a traumatic event, a kind of mistake that this person made in his football career. He missed a very important penalty, which resulted in a huge public shaming. And although the name of the book takes its name from football, this isn't really about football, it's more about his personal response to that event and now the process of rebuilding his family and also rebuilding his life and allowing himself to have a second chance at happiness and fulfillment. Ronan Hession is just the most fantastic observer of human behavior. And there were so many moments where I was reading this and I was just like, oh my God, yes, you have articulated that so perfectly and in better words than I will ever be capable of in my whole life. I'm in awe of his writing and I can't wait to read anything else that he writes. And so, in pursuit of convincing you to read this book, let's find a good quote for you. Okay, so these two characters are having a conversation about how they've met kind of later in life, and they find it weird to consider that the other person has had this whole full existence before them. Like prior to them meeting, they've lived a full life. So it's a man and a woman, and the woman says, I'm not sure I put too much faith in a person's life story though, the stuff that's happened to them. If I met an old school friend and they asked me what I'd been up to for the past 20 years, I'd probably tell them in a few sentences. But if they asked me what had gone through my head that morning, I could keep them talking all day. Which of those is what's happening to a person, really? The outside stuff or the inside stuff? I could go on, it's so wonderful. I think it's very appropriate that this book has a work of art on the cover, because it is one, truly, so lyrical, so self-assured, so astute, just so exquisite. I'm obsessed with this book. And like I said, it was literally the very first book that I read this year, and it's been clinging on to this top spot of one of the best books that I've read. I've spent most of 2022 just figuratively bashing people around the head with this book and being like, you have to read this. So that's what we're doing right now. Okay, book number 4 of the top 5 books that I've read so far in 2022 is Meg Mason's Sorrow and Bliss. And truly there could not be a better title for this book, because Sorrow and Bliss is exactly what this is. Like, that is exactly the tone of this novel. The tone is very dry and witty and sardonic. There's a punchline or a joke like every other sentence that really keeps you on your toes. It's very, very smart, but it's also a completely heart-wrenching and frustrating and difficult story about a person's battle with mental health. She also encounters kind of difficulties within her family, the breakdown of her marriage, etc., etc. It's very, very fascinating. Again, so perceptive and just with completely electric prose. I couldn't put this down. And for me, there's nothing worse than reading a book that is trying to be funny and just doesn't land with you. This was perfect. I felt like it was just linguistically beating the shit out of me, and I loved it. So, let's go with one of the more sad lines, because that's what I'm into. Martha, he said afterwards, lying next to me. Everything is broken and messed up and completely fine. That is what life is. It's only the ratios that change, usually on their own. As soon as you think that's it, it's gonna be like this forever, they change again. That is what life was, and how it continued for 3 years after that. The ratios changing on their own, broken, completely fine, a holiday, a leaking pipe, new sheets, happy birthday, a technician between 9 and 3, a bird flew into the window, I want to die please, I can't breathe. I think it's a lunch thing, I love you, I can't do this anymore. Both of us thinking it would be like that forever. She really captures elements of day-to-day life so exquisitely, but also emulates the way that other people speak in such a clever way. It's so brilliant. I think if you like Fleabag, this is very much the same vibe. Oh, and I really liked this section too. So Martha says, I'm the worst person in the world. No, you're not. Patrick's hand came down in a fist and he hit the arm of the sofa. You're not the best person in the world either, which is what you really think. You're the same as everybody else, but that's harder for you, isn't it? You'd rather be one or the other. The idea that you might be ordinary is unbearable. Like, are you kidding me? She paints this brilliant portrait of these characters and I loved it. Now, for book number 5, I was really toying between a few different options because there's a few different books that I have rated 5 stars. Books like Project Hail Mary, Transcendent Kingdom, Electra, and I was really torn of like what could round out this list. And weirdly, the book that I ended up settling on is not a book that I rated 5 stars. I actually gave this 4.75. However, I always think about this quote by Caleb Azuma Nelson where he says, sometimes the best books aren't the ones that you had like the best experience of reading, but the ones that continue to pull you back. The ones that you cannot stop thinking about. And for me, that is this book. This is The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen Agostini. Both this and Sorrow and Bliss were shortlisted for this year's Women's Prize. And in my humble opinion, both of these books were robbed. The book that actually won was my least favorite of the 5 shortlisted books, but let's not get into that. This book also really toes the line between tragedy and comedy, and it's unlike any other book that I've read before because it's written in Creole dialect with this Trinidadian main character who is just completely unforgettable, and I fell head over heels in love with her. She had me in the palm of her hand. This is such a vibrant and colourful book with another amazing cast of peripheral characters, but it's also plagued with violence and cruelty, both at the hands of the police and also at the hands of this woman's husband as a result of very intense, abusive misogyny. Like, this character has just been created and depicted so vividly and clearly that every line is completely piercing. It's like this character has crawled into your ears and like burrowed its way into your brain and just lodged itself there and now just exists inside you. Like I said, I completely fell in love with her, and it's extraordinarily done. Her name is Alethea. She runs this kind of boutique clothing store that sells costumes for carnivals, and she's approaching her 40th birthday, and this fact, alongside witnessing a very traumatic event, basically encourages her to reflect on her life and her state of affairs, and she begins to unravel things that have happened to her in her past and also the things that are currently happening to her too. And it's just 250 pages of incredible introspection. There's amazing build-up of tension which just explodes, and it's so gripping. I think I have the perfect quote to end on, because there's a section where she talks about the value of books. And I feel like that's how we should end this. This is how I just see the world, by reading books. I just go to London, Hong Kong, Siberia even, when I read a book. I just meet all kind of people, learn all kind of words, live all kinds of lives. Thank God for books. Thank God for books indeed. Thank God for these books specifically. So we have The Promise, Lena Knows, Panenka, Sorrow and Bliss, and The Bread the Devil Need. These are my 5 favorite books of this year so far. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope that you maybe found your next favorite read. I've had a great reading year so far. I'm very intrigued to see if any other books kind of make their way into this top tier for me in the remainder of the year. And of course, I will let you know as soon as that happens. So thank you very much for watching this video. A huge shout out to Shopify for sponsoring it. Don't forget you can go to shopify.com/jackedwards to get your free 14-day trial. My reading logs are available at inkoutsidethebox.co.uk, as are the rest of the products that I sell. Thank you so much for watching this video. All the best, stay in touch, and until next time, have a wonderful day. Bye-bye!